ready to get started? Start. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys for everyone that came in person and everyone who's joining us virtually. My name is Peter Given. I'm part of the World Trade Center Utah. I'm the manager of market research and analytics. Again, thank you for joining us on our Web3 developments from Utah to the world. We'll be discussing a variety of different topics within the Web3 world and just crypto, blockchain, things similar to that nature. With us today are three distinguished guests here with experience that ranges from the development of cryptocurrencies to the legal implications of this evolving technology. It's my pleasure to introduce to you all of our panelists, Tron Black, Darcy Van Orden, and Jonathan Bench. Tron is a freedom advocate, crypto developer, entrepreneur, and founder of two startups that were sold to publicly traded companies. Tron holds a BS in computer science and an MBA. Since early 2013, Tron has been working in cryptocurrency space as a miner, developer, investor, and trader. He's one of the first 5 employees of T0 and helped to issue the first publicly traded SEC acknowledged parallel crypto equity for Overstock.com. Correct? All right. And he has issued the world's first crypto bond offering. Quite an achievement. He has worked for AMX International, a crypto fintech company located in Hong Kong. Tron is also a principal developer for Medici Ventures, which invested in a portfolio of blockchain companies, including P0, Bankerous, Bit, Bolts Mines, Chainstone Labs, Riviat, Settlement Mint, Vincent, and Spira? Is that what you said? Spira, sorry. Tron has given away cryptocurrencies to hundreds of people in order to increase awareness of how the value now moves as easily as you know. He's written articles about Bitcoin, Monero, Dash, financial regulations, security tokens, and Ravencoin, and he has been featured on many cryptocurrency podcasts. He's the inventor of a number of podcasts in the crypto space and regularly gives talks on cryptocurrency topics worldwide. Additionally, Tron is currently the president of the Ravencoin Foundation, an advisor to T0, TUSC, WedX, Relio.fund, and a supporter of RBN, which is both a top cryptocurrency and a leading crypto asset platform. Lastly, he is also the founder and creator of Ravencoin, is that correct?
Yeah.
Perfect, all right.
Yeah, lead developer.
Lead developer, all right.
Doesn't own it though.
Don't know.
In the middle here, we have Darcy. She grew up in the DC area and now lives in Salt Lake City. She started working in competing currencies, assisting to pass Utah's Legal Tender Act in 2011, which helped monetize gold and silver as a currency. Darcy stopped working in the crypto space back in 2014. In 2014, she proposed a bill, or started working in the crypto space in 2014. In 2015, she proposed a bill to the Utah legislature to allow citizens to pay for their state taxes in Bitcoin. Currently, Darcy is the CEO at Estate Chain, a company which is one of the pioneers leading the intersection between blockchain technologies and the real estate industry. Estate Chain is the only multi-chain platform to buy and sell real estate with cryptocurrencies from escrow to signing, all done in a crypto or crypto fiat hybrid approach. Additionally, Darcy is an advisor and board member to InnoGov, a startup launching Ballotech, a blockchain platform, as well as a blockchain suite of solutions for the government. And lastly, we have Jonathan here. We are co-partnering this with Jonathan's firm, Harris Bricken. So Jonathan is actually the chair of Harris Bricken's corporate practice and managing attorney at the Law Salt Lake City office. He helps public and private companies with international and domestic business transactions. His clientele includes companies from Asia, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas. Jonathan has worked and consulted in the US, Asia, and South America, and is fluent in Chinese and Cantonese. Additionally, he is a member here of the board at World Trade Center Utah. He regularly counsels business owners and presents to national and global trade organizations regarding international business transactions, particularly foreign direct investment. Jonathan is also an emerging legal expert in the fast-moving and complex Web3 ecosystem, including decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, decentralized finance, or DeFi, cryptocurrencies, coins, tokens, including non-fungible tokens, NFTs, and smart contracts as well. In his spare time, Jonathan enjoys spending time with his wife, Marianne, and their 5 children, exploring the outdoors, practicing Kaido, learning guitar, and working on getting his Spanish to be as good as his Chinese. Is the microphone on? Perfect. All right. So in addition to Ravencoin and estate chain, we would also like to highlight some of the other several Utah companies in this crypto and Web3 space. So specifically, Ravencoin is an open source blockchain project to enable P2P payments from one person to another, specifically for the transfer of assets such as tokens. Is that right? Perfect. All right. And again, estate chain is a multi-chain platform to perform and sell real estate with cryptocurrencies. This includes the KYC processes, escrow, signing of the contracts, and receiving the title on the blockchain. Another one is SafeMoon, which is a DeFi token on the Binance Smart Chain blockchain that rewards people that hold onto it instead of trading. It implements this on a 10% penalty tax fee for selling, with 5% of that tax then allocated to people who still own that token too. This is to prevent the price of the coin from dropping as people start selling it. SafeMoon is also stands for, quote, safely to the moon, end quote. Another one is Giddy. It's an app to earn passive income on the blockchain via non-custodial crypto wallet. Only the user can access the wallet with a private key and a multi-identity authentication. So the high yield comes from investments in the DeFi space. And lastly, one of the largest ones is actually just sold to Nike here recently, is RTFKT. It's a creator-led organization that uses the latest in game engines, NFT, blockchain authentication, and augmented reality to create digital sneakers and artifacts. Again, it was sold to Nike just recently here in December of 2021. So with that, we'll start with some questions here. First one here to Jonathan and Darcy. So one of the buzzwords that we've been hearing a lot about recently is Web3, especially on social media and even through some of these mainstream media outlets. Can you give us a brief overview of this term and maybe how it relates to blockchain and cryptocurrencies?
Well, first and foremost, I think the key to Web3 is it's the future of owning our own data and being in a peer-to-peer environment where we're eliminating the unnecessary institutions, right? So we no longer feel the bank needs to be involved and you can lend from peer to peer. I think that's what gives people an opportunity to live in a very different world where you have greater opportunity, where you're not beholden to institutions that might otherwise keep people out who wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity.
And I sense that a lot of folks here, we had introductions early. So I sense a lot of you are pretty technically savvy. So we have at least 100 people online. So we have to at least start at the very high principle level before we dive down deeper. So for those of you who aren't aware, the whole concept of the way the internet has rolled out from the early 90s is we have data centralization, which means that you have centralization, you have the control, and then you can mine from that. So basically all the power is in the FANG companies right now. And so part of the problem with this is that we don't control our data. We have to use intermediaries that charge high fees. And so the principles of decentralization means that we are taking that, we're giving power back to people, we're decentralizing things all on systems all over. And these are independent systems, right? So we have independent blockchains like Tron has given me lots of instruction over the last couple of months that I've been thinking to understand how kind of what it means to be decentralized, and that's really the buzzword here, is the decentralized part. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later in terms of how brick and mortar companies, how anybody can make money in this space. From my perspective, as a business advisor, a lawyer, people come to me, I have clients come to me all the time and ask me general questions of what's going on, how do we make money, and what does this mean? And so from my perspective, I actually want to lead with saying this right, the way that blockchain has been deployed and is being deployed is rewriting the rules for every industry in the world, every industry. And so there are potential applications to every industry. And so people who say, well, it's just a phase, it's only for the chip heads, right? I mean, it's for everybody. Okay, so that's what I want to leave with is there are implications here. So bringing us all together, talking from three very different perspectives. I hope that's what we can give you an overview. And as you start thinking, there are potential applications for government, for nonprofit, for-profit, boutique, multinational, right? Wherever you sit in the chain of commerce, there are opportunities to do this right and to do it well.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Darcy. Sean, question for you. Can you describe the main types of blockchain technologies and what the pros and cons of are of each of those?
Yeah. Like Jonathan, I'll start with a little bit of an overview. So on January 3rd of 2009 was when Bitcoin launched. What happened on that day is the ability to transfer value over the internet without having an intermediary. Before that, you kind of end up going to banks and Venmo and things like that. There's somebody kind of in the middle. And so once it's a distributed network that can transfer value, the reason it can transfer value, normally you can't copy something on a computer, right? That's counterfeiting. So if you have money on the computer, you copy it, then you have two of them, and that doesn't work. So what happened was basically to kind of put it in layman's terms, kind of a big ledger, a big spreadsheet in the sky, where everybody's looking at that thing, by everybody, all the computers that are running the same software are looking at this and making sure that all the transactions are legitimate and digitally signed. And so that allows value to transfer. So that was kind of the big change. As far as the different types of blockchains, obviously the first one is Bitcoin. The value is there just because there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And there's copies of like Litecoin is a different one that does kind of the same thing. But that's sort of just a commodity. So there's the Bitcoin is treated a lot like a commodity, and it's just the fact that there will only be a fixed number of them that gives it value. But because of this ability to transfer value, and I'll kind of throw Ravencoin in this mix only because it's similar to Bitcoin, only you can and has a token that will be only ever 21 billion Raven, and so it has a fixed number, even though there's more of them. But on Ravencoin, you could create your own token, whatever you want, pick a name, the name has to be unique, it kind of figures all that out to make sure that you have a unique name. But now you have the tokens, and you can think of them like poker chips. And poker chips are worth kind of what you say they're worth. It could be an hour of your time, a share of a company, something that's redeemable in the future. So it's really up to you. So that's another type where you create this token. And that token may be a security, if it represents a share of a company, for example. But if it represents a share of artwork or something like that, that isn't in a company or is revenue generating, might not be a security. So it could represent different things. And then going a step beyond that, you also have what we call, there's smart contract chains. So this would include Ethereum, EOS, Solana. There's a whole bunch of different ones, Binance Smart Chain. And these are blockchains that can actually run code, but they don't run it in one place. They run it everywhere. So every node that's connected to the network runs exactly the same code and comes to exactly the same result. And that allows you to write a program, fairly simple program. It can be something that loans money, borrows money, pays interest, things like that. Those programs can run on these smart chains, and they always come to the same results because they're designed to do that. If they need information, they don't go get it. Somebody has to digitally sign that information, put it into the contract, and then everybody gets that signed information. That signed information could be the result of a score of a baseball game, or it could be the result of what the interest rate is today, or something like that. But because it's digitally signed and everybody has exactly the same thing, everybody comes to exactly the same conclusion. You can write programs around this. And then these programs, they just run, and that's, so those are the main types. So you have Bitcoin, which is commodity, Ravencoin's commodity. You have tokens that you can create yourself so that you own them, and then they can represent different things. Like anybody can own these tokens and create them. And then there's smart contract chains, which have the ability to run a program identically everywhere and come to the same result. And there's all kinds of things being layered and built on top of these smart chains that mirror a lot of the financial types of things that currently banks do, including paying interest and lending money and paying interest and things like that. And those can be used like Lego blocks so that other people can build on top of those.
Thank you. Darcy, is that how State Chain works, is using that smart contract basis?
Well, we're actually an exchange, so I'll
Okay.
get into that a little bit more, but I was just going to mention, getting back to the types of blockchains as well, you have proof of work, which is Bitcoin is the longest standing is proof of work. And then, so you have pros and cons there. It's the longest standing, so it's the most longest proven, but it does get some criticism as far as a con from being high energy use, because it comes down to the computation power it takes to complete the mathematical equation, the algorithm to complete the block. Ethereum is still also a proof of work. However, its goal is to migrate to, a proof of stake. So proof of stake, people get more excited about those coins, and that falls in the realm of your Solanas, your Cardanos, and a lot of the other blockchain coins, because the stake validators, the more tokens that they carry, it just requires less to actually, it requires less energy to be used when you're doing proof of stake. So I feel like that's one of the positive reasons why Ethereum is trying to migrate over to proof of stake, just to save in energy costs. So that gets away from that issue of people keep talking about, cryptocurrencies are using too much energy, all of that. Proof of stake is solving that issue.
Thank you. So Sean, you briefly touched on the decentralized finance and how it might differ from the traditional banking ledger. Do you mind expanding upon that?
Sure, yeah. So in general, all of these blockchains are ledgers, and they're transparent ledgers, meaning anyone can download them. You basically install the software and it actually downloads it for you. And so everybody can see every transaction. This differs from the bank. The bank is a trusted third party. There's a reason they're Marvel. They need to kind of inspire trust, and giving them your money, and they're tracking transfers and things like that, paying interest, et cetera. Those same things have been created on these programs that run kind of everywhere. But without the trust is not in an institution. It's not like, oh, I trust Wells Fargo, I trust Citibank, et cetera. It's I trust the code. Now, the code has failed, right? We're kind of in you hear about this quite a bit, actually. You'll see, oh yeah, $50 million, stolen and taken and things like that. A lot of times those are just quite literally software bugs or poorly written smart contracts, which is this code that runs on this ledger. And somebody else kind of reads it and says, hey, there's a flaw, and they steal all the funds. Sometimes they're white hat hackers and they get the money back. And sometimes, oftentimes they're not, they just take the funds. But we're kind of in this learning phase. A lot of the stuff that's happening and the hacks are happening on newer chains with newer languages that they're still working on. But the difference between the ledger is the bank ledger, trusted third, the blockchain, and then the code's getting better.
Thank you. So with that decentralized finance, we've been seeing the situation that has been occurring and developing here in Ukraine with Russia. And one of the first consequences we saw that the Western world imposed on Russia, well, some of those from the SWIFT system. Jonathan, this is towards you. Do you foresee the Russian government or Russian banks then going towards cryptocurrency, or maybe even pivoting towards the Chinese government too?
Yeah, I'll give a little bit on this. Darcy and I talked about this ahead of time. She knows a lot about Russian finance. So the great thing about the ledger system is that it's open, right? I mean, from a governance standpoint, from due diligence, there's nowhere for anything to hide, right? Every transaction is tied to a wallet. That wallet, eventually that money comes off chain to someone's wallet, from the wallet to some off ramp, some physical off ramp, and that can be traced, right? We saw this just recently with the UK. In the UK, they found a bunch of wallets that were tied to Russian oligarchs. And when the money came off chain, they said, thank you very much. And I think they're using it to help Ukraine, right? So there are definitely real world implications and international implications in the finance system for people who think, well, I can remain anonymous online, and that's true to a point, right? But if you go to the bank, right? Whenever you start using real world tie-ins to this, suddenly your anonymity goes away. So has very interesting applications for where you think you can hide, and eventually you can stay hidden for a while, but kind of like Bin Laden, right? Eventually you have to come out and throw away your garbage, and that's when they're going to find you if they're looking for you, right? So so definitely practical applications there. In terms of the China tie into this, China is in the midst of trying to pull as many nations as it can into its orbit, international orbit, especially through economic diplomacy. And so to the extent that China can do that through friends or foes, through lending relationships, it's doing that. And so part of this, China has an alternative system to the SWIFT system. It's called CIPS. I don't know if they pronounce that CIPS or not, but maybe it's a Chinese thing. And Russia also has an alternative system as well. Russia's is very small. I looked last night, I think there are only about 400 institutions in Russia's alternative to the SWIFT. China has more, but the interplay here is that any nations, any banks that want to be a part of the US financial system in some way will get some kind of ultimatum from the US government that says, either you play with us or you play with them, right? That's what I foresee happening at some point if we continue down this divergent path with China. Now, China doesn't want full-scale confrontation with the US anywhere, right? Not militarily and not economic, although the economic confrontation continues in the way of this bifurcation between US-centric world and China-centric world. So it's going to happen. It will continue to push its system. The renminbi is going to continue to get more utilized more frequently as China spreads out, and it's going to be a nation-nation, bank-to-bank decision, right? I mean, every time I write an international contract, we can choose what is the currency of the contract. And so to the extent that the Chinese side has more leverage, then we'll be dealing in renminbi, and there's no way around that. So I think when we system, especially as the United States, have fostered China's rise over the last 4 decades, we have to deal with the consequences, and that's what we're all grappling with now. So it impacts the financial system. It impacts the way China is. China kicked basically all of its Bitcoin miners out of the country, and because China likes to keep a tight rein. So there's always the China piece of how is China dealing with this is always kind of the question to come back to. And there will be implications. There's no way around it. So we don't have time to talk a lot in depth on this. We could talk later about it, but yeah, certainly China is playing a role, and it will continue to flex its muscle as much as it can.
I was going to mention now, when I was a little girl, my mom did a cultural exchange, and she brought in students originally from Spain, and she'd find the host families every summer, and then eventually Russia, then Japan, and then finally with Saudi students. I bring this to Russia in particular because through that she made, she started doing a cruise along the Volga River in Russia from Moscow to St. Petersburg, where Americans could go and they could enjoy and understand the culture post USSR. So I had the gift of it as a young girl, being able to spend 2 summers in Russia in '92 and '93, just after the fall. And I bring this up only to say lots of criticism of cryptocurrency is the high volatility. Well, I myself, as a little girl, saw the volatility of fiat, of the ruble in Russia from one summer to the next. The first summer I was there, it was about 100 rubles to the dollar. The next summer, they saw hyperinflation of about 1,000 rubles to the dollar. And so I just bring that up because it is a common criticism. And then bring us to where we are today with Russia. Yes, we are seeing the Russian government scrambling because we are an exchange. We have had numerous Russians reach out and see if we can assist. Now, because of sanctions, we're not able to do so, but it has made it very interesting that certainly Russians around the world are looking to cryptocurrency as an alternative to the freeze on banks and sanctions.
Thank you. We've also seen that China is developing their own digital currency. We've seen that from Facebook too with their lira. With that being said, do you think that the United States Federal Reserve is going to create their own cryptocurrency? And do you foresee this maybe like the US dollar losing its value as the reserve currency too?
Yes, in fact, I knew this was happening. I knew this was coming, right? I mean, all the indicators were saying so. When the US government hired a major executive at Coinbase, it was like loud and clear to me. And there was no question, it was just a matter of time that the US would want to get into this market. And so they've already been working on the CBDC, which is the central bank digital currency. And the Federal Reserve has been working on this. They're in beta test. They actually published a report back in January mentioning that it's going. They're hoping to have this launched as soon as they can. So we're all headed that way, governments as well. It's just a matter of time. And if we look to countries like El Salvador, that's a great indicator when they adopted this past summer Bitcoin as currency just alongside the US dollar. So lots of things happening. Could something eclipse, the fiat currency of the US dollar? That's full crypto, not the central bank's crypto. I could very well see that happening. We're just getting closer and closer to the world together. Technology allows it to be so. And I think El Salvador is a great indicator. And obviously the Federal Reserve sees this as a good idea as well. And I feel like the moment we move the US dollar to being a crypto dollar, Americans will also be adopting other currencies as well, because they'll really have, they'll see it as just a common choice. They're gonna have that, they're gonna carry some other crypto, everything, all.
Sure, thank you. So you also talked about volatility, and we've been seeing that inflation now is at its highest level in 40 years. With that, the Federal Reserve has decided to raise interest rates. With that being said, we've also seen that the stock market crash a little bit and a crash in the crypto market. Do you foresee there's still being this similar ties here between the stock market and the crypto market? Sean and Darcy?
As a longtime crypto person, I would prefer that the two aren't highly correlated, but they are. But I think the main reason for that is a lot of the money or value that was going into purchasing crypto was being borrowed. So you can borrow very inexpensively, or have been able to in the past, borrow very inexpensively, 2.5%, that type of thing, against your home. And when crypto was in kind of a bull market, you have the ability to kind of earn potentially tens or 20, 100% gains. That because of that money being in there, when the interest rates go up, that stops and things sort of unwind. So what we saw last week was kind of an unwinding of that easy money. And so that kind of put a lot of pressure on crypto. At the same time, it put a lot of pressure onto the stock market. So right now they're highly correlated. As interest rates go up and become more normalized, I think the correlation will decrease.
Well, I think the forecast, as people look out, people have got to hedge their bets. If you've been watching and you're familiar with quantitative easing, the Federal Reserve spending, printing more money for decades, this has been happening. But when we started, it just happened excessive printing, I would say during 2020, and we're all paying for it now, right? Like you can't just spend into oblivion and not expect to see the ramifications of that. And so I think because of that, people are looking, like if you're just holding money in your bank, you've lost, right? Because at least they're starting to admit what the real inflation numbers look like, and it's very bleak. So to me, you're either putting that money in real estate, or if you're wise, I feel like cryptocurrency is the only thing. It's hard to say it right at the moment because it's dropped significantly, but for those who've been at it, yes, but I see this as you buy on a dip, you guys. So fire sale on Bitcoin, fire sale on Ethereum, you should all be buying. That's good news. So I definitely have more faith in cryptocurrency than I had in any fiat currency around the world.
And for those who aren't monetary policy experts like me, I think of it this way. It's a fundamental supply and demand in crypto, right? So for crypto that can keep replicating into oblivion like we can with fiat currency, we don't know what the future holds, right? But for Bitcoin or others that have a horizon, when you artificially limit supply, then you fundamentally can't. It's the anti-inflation, right? It's because at some level we know that it's going to end, and then it's like we were stopped the supply of gold. We're not pulling any more gold out of the earth. We know definitely what's here, and then the value will correlate differently. So that's my meager understanding of monetary policy.
So Darcy, you briefly touched on the real estate aspect, maybe investing into real estate. How might this intersection for crypto and real estate be impacted in the future with state chain or some of the other technologies?
Well, it's huge. So the way I see it is, first and foremost, I feel like real estate is biggest markets in the entire world, right? $300 trillion plus. And so I see it as a very positive way that people are now figuring out how can they transact their real estate transaction using crypto. And that is exactly what my company, Estate Chain, does, as we are a central exchange, a private exchange to exchange cryptocurrency into fiat. And so basically the buyer will pay me in crypto and I pay the seller in fiat, local currency, wherever it is around the world. So in the United States, pay the seller in US dollars, in India, rupees, Mexico, pesos, whatever that looks like. So to me, real estate is definitely, there's a strong correlation there, and it only makes sense that people are looking at how they can hedge their bets from ahead of inflation. And to me, crypto and real estate are natural complements to each other.
Thank you. So with real estate too, we also see, we have to be, have a lot of legal aspects and, the smart contracts and aspects of that. So Jonathan, how does this then tie in for the smart contracts associated on the blockchain?
Short question, right? What are the legal implications of blockchain being deployed around the world, right? 30 seconds, I'll be done. Darcy and I were joking about this before we started talking, is people tend to check their intellect at the door when there are good opportunities, right? They see crypto as an opportunity, they see blockchain, whatever it is, they're like, I'm all in, doesn't matter, we're going forward, right? And they forget to check to me, are totally foundational principles of doing business, right? You do due diligence. Who are you getting into business with? What do you know about them? What's their track record? And in blockchain speak, are they fully doxed, right? Can you look these people up and see what they've been doing? Can you find anything out about them, right? And so for me, that's the first principle, is every time you get into any kind of transaction, and especially when you're working across international borders, do you know who you're getting into business with? Do you implicitly trust them? And if you implicitly trust anyone, you're an idiot, okay? So that's just a fact of life, is you can't, and even people who you trust, I do this all the time with business owners, friends, family members who get into business together. At the beginning, everyone is totally happy and trusts each other. And when things start to go sideways, they call a lawyer and they say, oh, I guess we should have had a contract in place for this. We always meant to do it. We didn't want to spend the $2,000 to get it done, right? So now they're spending much more on the back end. So from my perspective, it's the same thing. And because of I'm sitting in the ivory tower, I guess, and I get questions all the time, front end, back end on businesses. It's the same thing, right? It's how much did you know going in? How much research did you do? How much risk is there? And did you put any mechanisms in place to deal with that when things fall apart? I say when things fall apart because everything's going to fall apart, people, right? And even that, things are going to change, right? Not only that, but your perspective and your desires and your business partners, it's going to change at some point. Someone gets sick, someone dies. So this is real life application to now we're doing business together on the chain, right? And maybe you're part of the DAO that has 2,000 members all over the world. Do you think your interests are 100% aligned with their interests? Not likely, right? And so you're looking at the rules of the game, right? What are the rules defined between you? And that's only kind of the foundational level of this, which is what kind of transaction getting into are you? The easy stuff, from my perspective, on the legal side, is things like NFTs. Because when we're talking NFTs, we're just talking digital rights. If you're in my world, when I'm buying and selling a business, there are tangible assets, things you can touch, real estate, other things. They're intangible assets, right? So these digital assets are a new class of intangible assets that are being created. There's value there, just like when you're building a brand from scratch, there is value. So every time you're creating an NFT, someone says, let's NFT this, you have to ask the question of what are these digital rights that are being created? What was created? What's flowing down to you? And just understanding. I mean, for me, I'm really simple. I'm drawing in crayon and pencil. What's the flow of the money? What's the flow of the title of assets from beginning to end, and what's going to go wrong in the middle? And so I would love to hear from these two about any situations they've seen, because when we get into blockchain territory, when you've got a system and maybe the code isn't sophisticated enough, or maybe you're waiting for someone to give the input because someone needs to say, oh yeah, there's been a default, or this asset that was transferred, or this whatever happened did happen or didn't happen. So when you have a distributed network, you suddenly have no one who can go and push the button and say, make it happen now. And so that when I'm talking to business owners, oftentimes it's a hybrid of Web 2.5. What's on chain, what's off chain, right? And you have to have the interplay back and forth, because there has to be a real world tie-in. If you're coming, I mean, we are in the real world right now. And so you have to have real world tie-in back back to assets that you care about if you want to be able to deal with this. So, and that's a hard thing when we have 10,000 computers around the world running the same code.
So I want to separate some of the stuff that you said from, there is on the really simple stuff, but we'll call it like the Bitcoin, the Ravencoin, Litecoin. Some of that trust stuff that you do need contracts for, et cetera, goes away. It's one of the advantages of something like Bitcoin is that you kind of you can split this into two things. And there's lots and lots of stuff that requires lawyers. There are DAOs and there's the issuing tokens that represent real world properties. Definitely need really smart attorneys for that. But there's also this kind of Bitcoin type thing where it's quite literally, it's a little bit more like gold, right? It's like you own it. Yeah, you're literally holding the keys, which your keys are actually a made up random number. You don't ask for them. You actually make up a big random number. Those are your keys. You keep those secret, and that's your possession of the Bitcoin. And as long as you keep those secret, you're the only one that has the ability to move that. You just keep that random number secret. So I just want to separate. There is an element in cryptocurrency specifically where it is trustless in the sense that you're not trusting somebody. You're not trusting a third party. You're not trusting a bank. You do have some responsibility yourself to keep that secret. That random number that your phone made up, or you can literally roll dice, but you need to keep that secret. So there's kind of two parts to this. Some that need lots of attorneys because there's securities laws. If you create a token and say this represents a share of my company, or you create an NFT and you say this is represents the copyright, future copyright to my art, those types of things need an attorney. But there's also ones like Bitcoin, like Raven, like Litecoin, that are just tokens that are more like commodities, more like gold. And I just want to kind of point out that there is a trustless element to some of this.
Thank you. So another one of the important parts that small business owners are concerned about would be the relation of the blockchain and how it might relate to crypto, or I'm sorry, cybersecurity and digital protection. Could you expand upon that?
Is that one more time?
The relationship between cybersecurity and the digital protection of their assets, or
yes. So I actually give a talk. I gave one down at UVM about a month ago, and so. I'll jump back to this idea of this random number that is your private key. So you hear about private key, public key. This is some cryptography stuff. Really simply, your private key is a random number that your phone makes up, or your computer makes up, and that is your. No one ever gets it. You don't ask for it. You don't register for it. That is your account. And a lot of times, if you play with crypto, you'll create a wallet and it'll have you write down either 12 or 24 words if you've ever done that. There's a reason for that. They take this big random number and they basically convert it into words just because it's less likely for you to mess up and transcribe numbers or put a number backwards, which will mess everything up. It actually takes the number, chops it into pieces, turns those pieces into a known list of words until you write down these words, and those words, putting them back in, you reconstruct that number. But that is a private key. So in crypto, you have to keep that secret. It's like a treasure map. You want to make sure that it's not only secret, but no one else sees it or copies it, because it's not the value, it's the key to the value. It's the ability for you to move it. If somebody gets a hold of it, they can move the value without your permission. And that adds some kind of tricky things, especially for, kind of for future. If you die, you kind of make sure that somebody has access to that, either through a safety deposit box, or you can split it into pieces so that no one person has all of it, and you can reassemble that back into the private key for the future, things like that. But as far as cybersecurity goes, there are viruses out there that are trying to get these private keys because they represent value now. And so there's kind of a whole bunch of different ways. There's what they call hardware wallets, which they look like thumb drives, but they're not. They basically have a little computer in them. They can store that random number that it made up, and then you can plug it into your computer, and your computer sends the transaction to that device. It signs it and then sends back out a signed transaction. The key never leaves the device; it never goes into the computer, so someone can't steal it. But those are very popular. You'll see those from Ledger and KeepKey and Trezor, are hardware wallets that help keep your crypto safe. And then, of course, you still, because that could get crushed or wet or something like that, there's ways to back that up. And again, you'll see these 12 and 24 words. If you ever have that chance, if you're ever doing a wallet, either on your phone, your computer, or on these hardware wallets, write those words down, keep them really, really safe. Because, even though it might be like, wow, I'm only storing $10, I don't really need to worry about this. There have been times where that $10 worth of crypto has become hundreds or thousands of dollars. So just be careful about it.
I was just gonna say that I consider cryptocurrency via blockchain cybersecurity 2.0, just because Bitcoin has had 0 security breaches since its inception in 2009. And the immutable nature of the ledger is not something that we have in other places. I mean, there's plenty of people who've had issues with banks because of human error, mistranscribing information, right? People have sued, numerous mortgage companies and banks over issues relating to their mortgage and other things. And so the way I see this, because the ledger is immutable, we don't have the risk of human error. And I feel like most issues are happening, whether it's the medical industry, whether it's any kind of document, there is human error. And I feel like that's the importance and that's the value behind it, is because it is immutable.
We are going to open up to question and answers, but we just have one more question for our panelists. And this relates more to, your traditional brick and mortar or your e-commerce businesses. So with that being said, the companies here in Utah, how can they incorporate this Web3 technology into their businesses into their business models, I should say?
Well, for starters, start accepting cryptocurrency on your websites, right?
This is the question I get asked 2 or 3 times a week by companies all over the world. And these are brick and mortar companies, right? They say, what, in any industry, okay, from cannabis, which I have a lot of transactions with cannabis, to who I spoke with most recently, let's just say an art company, right? A company that deals in artwork, physical artwork. So that's the question, right? Is among all of the technologies available, right? We have blockchain underpinning all of this. Then we have NFTs, which are basically digital rights to something, right? Some kind of asset. We have cryptocurrencies, which help store value. We have tokens that can represent any number of things, right? Tokens it's a little slice of something that's valuable, right? And that's the biggest, most broadest definition I can give you on tokens. And then we have DAOs. So let me give you an example of each of these. So the easiest analog for brick and mortar companies in my mind is NFTs, because NFTs can represent anything. And every brick and mortar company has a brand. They're trying to build brand. They're trying to build the value of the brand. And so they're creating. You already have tangible brands. And so when you're thinking about how to engage with your stakeholders, right? With your who's your audience, who is interested, who's excited about your product. How do you build a community around that? And how do you deploy that community to increase the value of your brand? That is, in my mind, what it means to use NFTs in a good way for an established company. And when we move to DAOs, DAOs can be big or small. I see DAOs as a great way to fund something new. Okay, so treat this like a traditional securities offering. So let's say you as a business owner have a new business venture. I'll give you an example. You want to make an acquisition in another state. It's going to cost $1 million. And maybe you don't have sufficient cash in operations, or you don't want to do it, or you just want to see what happens. You can go and create a token. You can do the security offerings the right way. You file with the SEC if you need to notify the state regulators. And then you do an offering. And instead of just doing a traditional offering with friends and family, you put it out on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, you say there's going to be a crypto component to this, and all of a sudden you will broaden your investor pool, right? And so as long as you're complying with existing securities laws, you now have access to a whole lot more investors than you did before for this discrete project that you have papered the right way, disclosed the right way, and now they own a part of it. And you can turn it into a DAO if you want to. You can involve everyone in the group on certain decision-making processes, just like you would if you created a wholly owned subsidiary. So that's the DAO tie-in. So NFTs, DAOs, crypto itself is very interesting. Like Darcy said, you can accept it, or you can, if you have like an online marketplace. I've seen this with a lot of direct sales companies. We don't call them MLMs in Utah because that's a bad word now. But direct sales companies in Utah, I've seen them create internal, right? These are kind of reward systems, right? You have, and they've been doing this for years, right? We just now have this, we have new terminology to refer to it as. But you have, you make a certain amount of sales rather than giving you actual money, we're going to give you virtual money and you can spend it in our ecosystem to buy more of our products, right? And so there are very many, like I said at the beginning, there are so many real world applications, smart applications to take your existing business and add some Web3 aspects to it. And at this point, a lot of it is riding the hype, right? Is understanding, being out there, being a trendsetter, being on the front edge of this. And then the last piece is, if you are in the metaverse, the immersive metaverse, then maybe if you have a physical product that you're selling, then you set up your own digital shop. I was talking to a cannabis owner probably last week, and they're going to form a virtual cannabis shop where you can go in and see. You can look at it. You can see the products. You can see certificates of authenticity, of certificates of origin for products. So there are a lot of applications for the ways that you can put your you can put a little bit of your business up up on the blockchain.
So a couple things. Ravencoin was created here in Utah, and it's great for NFTs. It's great for payment rails. You can pay for things over the internet with it, like money. And you can do what Jonathan said, you can actually tokenize shares of something. You just have to make sure that you do that legally from a regulatory standpoint, because there's a lot of laws kind of around that. I would like to point out that Jonathan Johnson is here. He is the CEO of Overstock.com. Ravencoin came out of Overstock, but it was also the first company to accept crypto, first public company to accept crypto. It was a big deal at the time, still does. So anyway, that was pretty amazing, and saves money if you're using that. You save money over, credit cards usually take somewhere in the neighborhood of 3%, whereas crypto, even with the conversion to fiat, is usually well under 1%. So that's kind of nice. So.
Thank you. Open it up to questions and answers to questions.
Jonathan Johnson, thank you for the shout out. By the way, accepting cryptocurrency as a form of payment is a pretty easy thing to do. Tron and Darcy and Jonathan, thanks for your comments. A lot of people hold their cryptocurrency on Coinbase. Recently, Coinbase announced that were they to go bankrupt, people couldn't access their cryptocurrency.
Yeah, this was something new. Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, has come out and said basically that's what they're being required to do. My understanding, I could be wrong, so check this, but my understanding is the way they're requiring them to hold it as assets and liabilities on the balance sheet kind of basically puts your crypto, which is kind of you give it to Coinbase, kind of puts it potentially at risk in the case of bankruptcy, that it kind of like wouldn't go back necessarily to the original holders, but could be kind of lumped into the into the bankruptcy thing, and which might change the priority of who would get that. So that's seems like a strange thing. I don't fully understand the accounting ramifications of that yet, but I'm sure there'll be lots of stuff coming out. This is fairly new, meaning within the last couple of days. Also, this is another thing with crypto. There's kind of a saying, not your keys, not your coin. And basically what it means is you can take crypto and you can hold it. When I talk about that random number, you can hold it on your phone on one of these hardware wallets, literally on a piece of paper which has your private key. You can create those. You got to be careful to make sure that that information doesn't get out through like a network when you're printing, but you can hold it yourself. So there's no reason that you have to trust this to what they call a custodian. A custodian would be somebody like a Binance, a Coinbase, something like that. You're actually holding it yourself. If you ever need to use it for something, you can send it. It takes usually less than an hour to send it to a custodian, so that you can either or you can send it directly, person to person, peer to peer. It's all built into the network to send that without having to go through a bank or a custodian. There's no reason you need to do that really ever. But if there is some reason you want to send it to Coinbase, let's say sell it for dollars or to transfer it to something else, it takes you about an hour to get it there, but you can hold it yourself. And that's what I'd recommend people do.
Yeah, I was gonna also say, definitely transfer to a cold wallet, but let's keep this also in check of regular banks as well. FDIC only insures what, up to 250,000 in an account, so reality is, if you have a lot of money, you know, and there's a run on the bank, you know, FDIC only might insure that much, but let's be honest, if something catastrophic happens, you're not gonna see that money anyway. If the US government falls apart, we're not gonna have access to that insurance anyway. My recommendation is always take things in your own hands, have your own cold wallet, protect yourself, for sure. And that's the goal of moving away from institutions that feel like they need to custody things. You can fully custody your own crypto. That's definitely my recommendation.
Hi, I'm Margaret Bussey, Executive Director of the Utah Department of Commerce. And I just wanted to take it back to something that you talked about right at the beginning, which is just the sort of the philosophy of the Web3 and how it will start to democratize power on the internet. Something that we're thinking about a lot is just the, you know, sort of the data privacy issue. Right, and I think a lot of people are thinking about that, not just us, but obviously a lot of people. And I wondered if you could comment, because I feel like this kind of went into like crypto and a bunch of the applications, but maybe take it back to that Web3 concept. And if you actually believe that is going to disrupt the current sort of surveillance capitalist model that prevails in tech, because that's what I'm super interested in.
Yeah, so when you introduced me, you know, I'm a freedom advocate. So the surveillance, financial surveillance system to me is extraordinarily onerous and is being applied across the board to the point where everything is known about everybody, including monitoring, SWIFT, these things like that. This started after 9/11 as part of the Patriot Act, Title III specifically. I know the person that wrote that provision, and even they have looked at it and said this it created unintended consequences. There's we've unbanked a whole bunch of people, not because it's illegal to bank them, but for someone who's in Somalia that wants a bank account, the first thing the bank does that there's from Somalia, the value of that person, putting them to track and keep track of their name and everything, and the risk that they pose potentially, you know, when regulators come in, et cetera. They just won't touch it. They just say, no, it's not worth the value. And so the person that literally wrote the Title III of the Patriot Act is looked at and is working towards, you know, trying to solve that problem, the unbanked that basically they unintentionally created. So there is in crypto, all of this random number that you create does create we'll call it an account number for you, a unique number. That is all public, so that number is public. What's not public is your attachment of that number to your name. That becomes public when you basically go to Coinbase and you deposit from that account into Coinbase. Coinbase says, oh, to sign up for your account, we need your driver's license and your social security number and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of understand, right? There's tax implications and things like that, but that attaches it and to all of your other transactions. So there is sort of a kind of this surveillance thing that's over it. Some people are for it, right? I'm sure the people that are trying to stop terrorism and money being used for terrorism, I'm sure that, you know, that's their whole focus. But just so you're aware that is happening, and sort of the monitoring and attaching of these accounts that are a unique number, they're being kind of attached to people's names, and that's the danger with crypto is that everything is completely public and transparent. So it's not a great tool for people who are trying to commit crimes, because it's not only is it completely transparent, but it's permanent, right? A permanent record of all the transactions that have happened, but not attached to the name. But once you attach that to the name, you kind of got this, think of it like yarn, like you see on those boards where people are attaching the person, the perpetrator to the whatever, and they're attaching yarn. That there's a yarn link to kind of every transaction that they've done, things like that, which is great for law enforcement, kind of unrolling it in the, kind of after the fact and understanding it, but isn't great when you start attaching names to every transaction as it moves into the fiat system.
I mean, the way I feel about it, there's lots of great projects that we're all aware of. There's sovereign identity projects where the goal is you can move anywhere and you'll have all your identity on the blockchain. So you don't have to walk around with papers, right? You don't have to walk around and say, prove this, prove that. I mean, think about with just natural disasters, right? If all of your documents were damaged, we want to have, basically a way to identify you on the blockchain so people can freely move and they aren't beholden to having something tucked away, that might get destroyed. I see a great future for people in this peer-to-peer environment. I mean, I see there's opportunity to micro-lend to people who don't traditionally have access to banks to purchase things. And because of the way smart contracts can be written, it can be done in a trustless environment and everything written in. And so things just happen when they meet their goals, they pay it back, they can or have more money to use. There's so much opportunity in this space. I also think too, for example, with tokenizing real estate globally. So we could have a situation where on a secondary market, you could crowdfund, properties. So somebody could have, a beautiful mansion. They could decide, okay, they're accredited investor, they've had it a year. Now they want to open it up to the general public. They want to crowdfund and tokenize this product, this real estate. And the result of that could mean anybody around the world with even just a small amount of money could invest in this property. And I see that as there's a lot of people who'd love to invest, but the barrier is so high. And this is why I feel like crypto is changing the world, because now somebody, if all they had to invest was $100, maybe they could invest $100 every month ongoing, and then they would actually have equity in some kind of a project and some kind of property. So to me, that's a huge step towards, I think, financial freedom for people who are in, disadvantaged populations, or people who live in countries where they don't have a banking system. I mean, our pride and joy in the United States and our major source of wealth in the United States has been the fact that you can get a 30-year mortgage and you can purchase a home and you become and build wealth because of that. And you can draw against it and you can, start businesses and all of that. But in a lot of places around the world, that opportunity does not exist. And so the way I see it is tokenizing real estate and other assets become an opportunity for more people who wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity can now start to have equity stake and start to build some sort of wealth. So to me, that's exciting. Another friend of ours that we all know built a clear phone, and that clear phone allows you to protect your data from the big five tech, right? Big five tech. Google doesn't make money from search. Google makes money because they steal your data and they know what you're. And then when I think about a product, all of a sudden, like Amazon, I just think of it. Amazon's like suggesting it to me. That's what I get afraid about. I'm like, they must have chipped me in my head while I was sleeping because they're sending me ads for things I'm thinking about. I'm terrified, right? So that's kind of some of the fear of our big five. And so getting back to that is that, can we get to a place where we own our own data? So Clearphone is an idea where you're owning your own data. All of maps aren't tracking what you're doing. And then potentially you might be able to sell your data. There might be medical reasons why you could actually sell your data. Oh, you want to study my medical history, all of that to understand and study and understand disease. Then you would have the ability to sell that. And all of a sudden your data is your commodity to either keep or sell. And that is part of that future and idea behind Web3 and peer-to-peer. So, and just becoming more sovereign in general. So to me, I see so many opportunities to help people around the world. I see so many ways that in communities, you can have a communal sharing of assets and that people can buy into it, right? Like you can buy a farm, but maybe you could buy an acre of a massive communal farm. Maybe you can all share in the purchase of a vehicle in the village, and you could do that through the protocols that exist, the technology that blockchain has enabled. So I see it as a very positive thing that can help us all become, I think, a little more sovereign and wealthy if we can work towards, I think, this peer-to-peer environment.
And just to point out, what's really interesting is there's one I've seen recently where you can buy a percentage of the royalties from artists now too, similar to like an NFT. It's pretty interesting. I think Diplo did it. I can't remember the other artists right now, but
We're up on time, so let's take a question from the virtual audience to show them some love, and then anybody in the room, I'm sure any of the panelists would be willing to answer any of your questions post-event.
thanks, Rand. So beginner question, I guess you could say, but obviously we've seen or heard a lot about the metaverse. Somebody in the audience or the virtual said, how can you access the metaverse?
Yeah, so the metaverse, a little bit like Web3 is kind of this big general term, but in general, it's kind of AR, VR, so kind of an immersive environment. There is actually an NFT store, for example. So if you haven't played it, who's done Oculus? Who's put on Oculus? Okay, about half. So Oculus just it's not connected to a computer. It's like like a cell phone. You charge it up, you put it on. Very immersive environment. Crypto, two things in crypto are very good for this, specifically NFTs, which is the ownership rights of potential 3D objects. And you can actually map them and put them in the thing. I've written articles about this, but basically kind of the equivalent of like a fancy watch and fancy purses and things like that can be created where they're branded, people know that they cost a lot of money, and be like the equivalent of like gold cufflinks and then, Breitling watch and things like that in the metaverse. So that's one possibility. There is a metaverse or 3D environment store, NFT store, where you walk through and you can purchase via crypto items, artwork, and things like that are on the walls in this virtual room, for Ravencoin. I'm sure this will come for other blockchains as well. But then also, I think the ability to transfer value, money, Bitcoin, Ravencoin, value, or even stable coins within the metaverse or within this virtual world is another thing that's going to be coming pretty quick.
I was just gonna say the most obvious one is that Zuckerberg changed the name of his platform from Facebook to Meta, because he knows this is where we're going. And so we're gonna see all these different metaverses emerge. I mean, I have friends who are working on their own metaverse projects. Block Cities is a great one to check out. You've got a ton of, metaverse like Agriland and just places where you get central land and buy land in the metaverse. So these are exciting. So it's like, hey, you wanna buy the Statue of Liberty? Better get on it right now. You want to buy the White House in the metaverse? Get on it. So, and then I can see in the future that eventually they'll all be connected, right? So you can go from one to another. You can go visit, kind of like musicians metaverse where you can see them virtually and like sing along with their songs and, just interact and purchase NFTs. So I see this all happening, and we're going to watch this unfold, right here. It's right here in front of us. It's happening. It's being built. So just watch out for it. But my only recommendation is make sure you still go outside and get vitamin D and bathe and do these types of things. So that's just my pro tips.
Yeah, I heard it explained in a great way that the way we interact with the internet right now is the metaverse. When you sit on your computer, you're looking at the screen, you are in the metaverse, right? You're in a place that's not your physical reality. And so the metaverses we're talking about is the immersive experience where your neurons are still firing because you're wearing the goggles and you can experience things. And so it ideally, for those of us who are parents and grandparents, this is a dive in, dive out experience, right? It's not a live 100% of your day in the metaverse, right? But it's the ability to go and be a part of it from your home, from your friend's house, to interact with people you wouldn't otherwise interact with, right? To have experiences you otherwise couldn't afford or couldn't do. And so that's the genius of this, right? Like everything, like every bit of tech, it's the smart application of it into your real life and you're remembering to bathe at the end of the day. So
Go outside.
outside, smell the real air. Yeah.
And one of the last questions we'll take here from virtual is, how would you track cryptocurrency for tax purposes, or in external events such as the event of a war?
Well, Utah's very own has TaxBit, and they are gargantuan and growing by the day. So amazing, shout out to TaxBit, check them out. Another friend of mine is working on a project called MoonTax. So there are people already working the space, and they're in Utah. So once again, Shout out to TaxBit and MoonTax, check them out.
And then what about in the event of like divorce or something similar to that? So,
In the event of divorce,
yeah, in the event.
contact your attorney. I don't know if that's okay, but,
So I met one of the CPAs who works at TaxBit at the Utah conference this week. And he said that we're still figuring out what the different asset classes are. Okay, so in accountant speak, there are ways these are classified and it matters from a tax perspective, and we're not there yet. But although starting this year, because of last year, you have to report, right? Your tax preparer is going to ask you, and I guess we're past tax season. I defer because my sister's dealing with that. And I'll get to it eventually. But it's coming, right? And it's important, and it's the IRS's job to give us the guidance, and your CPA is going to be up on that. And so you don't have to stress. If you do your own, there will be guidance as well. So for the most part, err on the side of reporting. That's legal advice for free today. Err on the side of reporting, and just know that in blockchain, there's nowhere to hide, right? So why try?
Perfect. Well, thank you, Tron. Thank you, Darcy, and thank you, Jonathan, for being up here today. Helping us understand Web3 and crypto a little bit better. Lastly, I just want to say that Salt Lake City, the city of Salt Lake City, I should say, is hosting the Cryptopia event on May 26th. It's an all-day event. If you're more interested in learning about this space, Web3, crypto, anything like that, check out the website.
Darcy will be speaking again there.
Yeah, Darcy will be speaking.
Code estate chain 22 to get 10% off your ticket.
What? Can you use your mic to say
Sorry,
that?
it's turned off.
To get 10% off of a ticket at Cryptopia, please use the code EstateChain22, all together, no spaces.
Perfect, thank you. Otherwise, thank you all for being here today, and thank you for the virtual audience for attending. Really appreciate it. Have a good day.